So today we're going to be reading from We Are Witnesses, 5 Diaries of Teenagers Who Died in the Holocaust. So interesting enough, the foreword was written by someone who lived in a place where I lived once, St. Louis. And she wrote a beautiful foreword. Not even Jewish, by the way. I remember reading the diary of Anne Frank one cold winter day when school had been cancelled because of snow. I finished the last few pages just as late afternoon shadows engulfed the room. Hurriedly, I switched on light, called my children to me and hugged them. Tightly. That was 25 years ago. Recently, I read We Are Witnesses, a collection of 5 diaries by Jewish teenagers, including Anne Frank, who chronicled their day-to-day ordeals in Nazi-occupied Lithuania, Hungary, Belgium, and Holland between 1940 and 1944. Once again, I was overcome with the need to embrace my loved ones. But more important, I was also moved to tell someone about what I've read. So you have David, Moshe, Yitzchak, Eva, and Anne, whose diaries are personal accounts of the true horror of the Holocaust. Their stories are intense and at first may startle you, even make you feel uncomfortable. Perhaps you'll experience some anger and frustration. That's okay. I sure did. But slowly I came to realize that these young writers weren't messengers of anger and hatred, suffering and dying. Actually, they were they're ordinary teenagers, much like you, your brother, sister, or friends, seeking a reason why such extraordinary, terrible things were happening to them, their families, and friends. Without exception, though each one clung to hope, and by their examples of courage and strength, bore witness to the resilience of the human spirit. The Nazis were stopped before they could complete their genocidal plans. But the evil that gave direction to their purpose is still at large in the world. We only need to pick up the newspaper or to listen to a news broadcast to hear terms such as ethnic cleansing, race superiority, and ethnic purity. This book, though written by Jews, is not only for Jewish readers. These diaries started as a direct challenge to an all-race hatred then and now. They passionately illustrate what happens when human rights are violated and nobody speaks up. They detail the process by which extremism corrupts justice and mocks mercy. We might all heed the statement by Martin Niemöller, a German pastor who summarized the important lesson we can all learn from the tragedy of the Holocaust. In Germany, the Nazis came for the communists, and I didn't speak up because I was not a communist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak up because I was not a Jew. Then they came for the labor unionists, and I didn't speak up because I was not a labor unionist. Then they came for the Catholics, and I was a Protestant, so I didn't speak up. Then they came for me. By this time, there was no one to speak up for anymore. After you have been guided through these personal accounts by Jacob Boaz, who is a survivor of a Nazi concentration camp, my hope is that you will take time to reflect, to look inward, then perhaps reach out. It is my belief that when you've read that last page, that's when the stories really begin. Beautiful foreword by the woman who, I don't even know, Patricia from St. Louis. So, just the introduction now. And I believe that the child is possessed by a flame more powerful than any force that endeavors to destroy our people. Adolf Hitler, Maximo, set out to change the world from the ground up. The German leader dreamt of creating an empire that would last 1,000 years and declared that millions of Jewish men, women, and children would have to be killed to bring it about. I have to pause and say this is very, very much like what the jihadists, extreme Muslims, are saying today. They want to build an empire and take over wherever they are, whether it's USA or Europe, and the way they project their jihadist plans to the Jews is just very typical of the way Jews were scapegoated during the Holocaust. When the gas stopped pouring and the guns fell silent, 6 million Jews lay dead. And the way lay dead is a good term. They were exactly like what happened in the massacre of October 7. They were tortured and abused in the most horrendous ways that you couldn't even imagine a human being could imagine. And they didn't lay dead. They were massacred and abused and tortured. A fourth of these were children. But for luck, I would have shared their fate. This is from a survivor of the Holocaust. My birth certificate states that I was born on November 1st, 1943 in Westerbork, a small farming community in the northeast of Holland. But the certificate is misleading. My first home was a barracks, Barrack 50, to be exact, in the Nazi camp named for the town. From Westerbork, 93 trains carried the bulk of Holland's Jews to their deaths in extermination camps located in Poland. The 93rd and last train carried Anne Frank. The Nazis justified the murder of children on the ground that it was impossible to destroy a weed without yanking out the root, since children were the germ cell from which a new Jewish danger could grow. The destruction was considered a must. Without it, the Nazis asserted, the war could not be won. The Jew would conquer the world. Yes, I see this. I see this in the mass media. I see this today. I saw it on TikTok. We're an empire, 0.0001% of the Middle East, and we're an empire, right? 0.0001% of the humanity of the billions of people on Earth. 14 million Jews are going to conquer the world, right? Right. Okay, conquer the world. And this, his crown, Hitler wrote in Mein Kampf, a book taught in Gaza, taught to school children in Gaza, this ideology was taught in Gaza in UNRWA schools where terrorists hid. And now they hide in American schools and universities, and they teach his ideology, so-called anti-colonial or whatever they call it, BS. Yes, Mein Kampf is the ideology studied in Gaza, taught to small, defenseless children. My struggle, the Bible of the Nazi movement, would become the funeral wreath of humanity. Hitler blamed the Jews for creating the moral codes based on the commandments to love one's neighbor and for giving birth to Christianity. He considered the ethical teachings of Judaism and Christianity to run counter to humankind's true nature and to be obstacles to Nazi world domination. In their stead, Hitler, Marchimont, and his followers glorified power and bloodshed and preached the doctrine of Aryan, by which he meant Northern European Gentile superiority, the myth of the master race. When the Nazis came to power in 1933, Jews had been living in Germany for more than 1,000 years. The first Jews had come to Europe in the aftermath of the first century Roman conquest of Palestine. Yes, this is what they called it, Palestine. Doesn't mean, though, that the modern-day Palestinians are anyway connected. The ancient homeland of the Jews. The Romans adopted Christianity as the official religion of their empire in the 4th century. In the centuries that followed the collapse of the Roman Empire, Jews did not have an easy time of it. Christians blamed them for the crucifixion of Jesus, who was a Jew, and passed laws that kept them from owning land or weapons or entering certain occupations. By the way, also owning pets. Yes, the dogs were either euthanized or murdered in horrible ways, dogs and cats and pets of Jews. They, following the Nazis' conquering of Europe, everywhere they went, Jews were not allowed to keep pets. And the pets were killed if they were connected to Jews. The Lateran Council of 1215 decreed that Jews had no mark they had to mark their clothes with a badge. And 50 years later, they were compelled to live in ghettos, city quarters isolated from Christian society. By the way, also in Islam. Although Jews were endured numerous waves of persecutions in Christian Europe, including expulsion from some countries, England in the 12th century and Spain in the 15th, and wholesale slaughter in other France and Germany in the 11th centuries. Can you imagine that? How people survived? There had never been a policy to kill each and every one of them, as in Hitler's Germany. As the centuries passed and the hold of religion waned, many Jews believed that the worst was behind them. In the 19th century, Western European Jews received the same rights as other citizens and quickly entered the mainstream. Too quickly. Some of their enemies said. More and more Jews shed their religion and kept their ties to a minimum and married outside their faith. Others found a new faith in socialism, which still today, which saw a bond among all working people that cut across national boundaries. The very success of Jews in the establishing their presence in Western Europe, be it in business or in university professors, publishers, writers, or doctors, also produced a backlash. Now they were no longer attacked for religious beliefs or for their supposed complicity in the crucifixion of Jesus, but were condemned as a race. Jews were branded as an alien, dangerous and indigestible people. Hitler brought the development to its fateful conclusion. Under the old-style Christian anti-Semitism, a Jew who converted was no longer a Jew, but a full-fledged member of the Christian community. This was no longer possible under racial theories that built the person's intellectual, moral, and physical traits were fixed for all time. A leopard cannot change its spots. Hitler believed that the world had entered a crucial phase. It would be Aryan or it would be Jewish, and that God had sent him to secure the victory for the master race. By warding off the Jews, I am fighting for the Lord's work, he wrote. The most important players in the power struggle were children. Give me the youth and I have the future, Hitler declared. And this explains everything that's going on in American universities. The German leader planned on founding special schools known as Ordensbürgen to realize his vision of the ideal Aryan male. Girls were considered inferior to boys, and their future was bookkeepers and breeders. How nice. Just like a certain religion, huh? That oppresses women. In my Ordensbürgen, Hitler boasted, a youth will grow up before the world will shrink back. A violently active, dominating